Hey there, YouTube land. Today we have a real disassembly video, and today we're going to be working on this old Zebco Model 600. Now this 600 was made sometime between 1977 and 1979, according to my research. So let's get started. And as always, I'm going to show you the tools, but I would also like to make a note that this will also work on the early model 600s that had black with the silver stripes that were made between 1970 and 1976, and it will work on the last run of the 600, which is known as the copper top because it had a copper front cover. And that was made. And those were made from 1980 until 1983. The build is the same, so hopefully this helps somebody. So what you'll need is a wide bit flathead screwdriver, or you can use a coin like a nickel to get the cover lock off, a 5/16 socket or wrench, or if you live in a country that uses the metric system, an 8mm, and a little screwdriver to take the E-clip off that holds the spool on. Excuse me. So first thing we're going to do is take the handle off and just go counterclockwise. This is a traditional thread, so lefty loosey, righty tighty. We all know this. And as always, have a tray to put your parts into. Now we can unscrew the cover lock. Oops. And you don't have to take it all the way off, just enough to get the covers off. So we'll take the front cover off, take the back cover off, which sometimes, there we go, can be a little difficult. And now we're into the gears and the spinner head. Now one thing about these spinner heads on here is sometimes they do get brittle and crack, and they can fall off. If you ever have that happen, one way I have found to deal with that is you can replace it with either a slip joint washer of the correct size or an O-ring. Yes, it won't be original, but it will keep your reel running, so if all you're concerned about is making sure you can use it, that's the way to go about it. Otherwise, you'd have to buy a parts reel and hope that the spinner head's in good shape. This one's a little dried, but what I did was I put a light coat of epoxy on it to kind of seal up everything. So now we can take the spinner head off. Now if you notice, this does have a 5/16 nut on it, but it's also slotted, so if you wanted to, you could use a wide bladed flathead screwdriver or a coin to take it off. I'm just going to use my socket, but you can go either way. So now we just take that off, pull the spinner head off. That's what it looks like underneath. Relatively simple. Now we're on to the spool. One thing you want to remember to do before you take the spool off is make sure you have your drag all the way loosened. Now the drag on this is opposite of what you will find on an old 33, and it's the same, and it works the same as the drag on a 606 and a 66. It's opposite threaded, meaning you turn it clockwise to loosen it and counterclockwise to tighten it. So let's make sure we have our drag all the way off, because that will help us get our spool off, because if you can see, that nylon block is what controls the tension on your spool. So let's go over here, and now we'll get that little flathead screwdriver and just slide it into there and get that E-clip off. Make sure you keep the finger on there so it doesn't go flying across the room. Alright, put that in our tray, and now you can take the spool off. Oop, I might have accidentally tightened it, so don't do what I did. So make sure you do the opposite. Again, clockwise to loosen, counterclockwise to tighten. For some reason it was a little tough coming off, but there we go. Could have been some line under it. Excuse me, guys. Had to get more comfortable. There's your spool. Now we can take our gears out. So you can take your pinion gear and shaft assembly out, like so. You can take that spring off, but unless it's either really dirty or needs replacing, I do not recommend it, because sometimes it is a little tricky to get back on. And then you can take your main gear out. And sometimes this will get in the way, so I like to just push it up to the middle position at least. And that comes out. And now the reel is completely disassembled. Now, as you can see, I have already cleaned and lubricated this reel. If you're just taking apart the reel now, make sure you clean and lubricate it. So let's begin the reassembly. So what I like to do is I like to start with the gears. So make sure your main gear shaft goes into that hole right there, like so. And then we're going to take our pinion gear assembly and put that back in like that. And then we're going to put our spool back on. There we go. As you can see, it's all the way loosened. As I said, make sure it's all the way loose before you take it off and put it back on, because it'll also make sure that the slot, you can see it there, that your E-clip goes into, is exposed. Okay, now we just take that, push on it with the little flathead screwdriver until it snaps back in like that. And now I'm going to put the back cover on. Now when you put the back cover on, if you'll notice, hopefully you can see this, I know my lighting's not the best, there's a little stud right on top of the reel foot, and there's also a stud on the top of the back cover, and on the bottom there's a slot, if you can see that. So what you want to do is make sure you line those up like so. I know it's kind of hard to see. And then you kind of sometimes you have to work it in to get it to seat right. There we go. Okay. And now we're going to get the spinner head back on. Now one thing you want to note in the spinner head is the hole is D-shaped, and that is for a flat space on the main shaft, if you can see it right there. So make sure those line up. And get this line out of the way. So what I like to do is I push up on the button and kind of just turn it on until you feel it seat. And sometimes, like I said, you just have to kind of work it on. There we go. Take the nut, and then as I said, I like to hand tighten this as much as I can first, and then I'll snug it up with the socket or wrench, or like I said, you can use a coin or screwdriver. And then we're going to put the front cover on, but first I have to grab this line. If you guys are wondering, this is Blues Mr. Crappie 6-pound test monofilament. The Zebco 600 is rated for 4 to 10 pound line, actually maybe 12 pound line, I'm not too sure, but usually all you really want to put on it is either 6 or 8 for your best results. And just like on the back cover, there's a stud on the top of the front cover, slot on the bottom, and the same on the Real foot, you have your stud right there and your slot on top. So basically just do the same thing, make sure they're lined up like so. Now we can tighten our cover lock on. And you don't want to over tighten this, just get it till it's good and snug like that. Now let's put our handle back on. Oops. And we'll get our handle nut back on. Like I said, just hand tighten it as much as you can. And take your socket and snug it up. And there we go. And now you know how to disassemble and reassemble a Zebco 600. Make sure everything else works. And I reverse, bait click. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.